My name is Robert Parker. I'm 34 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I stood in the darkest corner of the Crystal Ballroom at the Plaza Hotel, gripping a glass of warm tap water because the waiters wouldn't serve me champagne. I watched my father, a man worth $50 million, point a finger at me in front of 200 of New York's business elite and laugh. He didn't just laugh. He invited them to laugh with him. He called me a supporter, a nice way of saying a failure, while my older brother William stood next to him, beaming like a king who had just conquered a new land. But before I tell you how that night ended, and believe me, you are going to want to hear how it ended, I need you to tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I'm reading every single one because I need to know I'm not the only one who has dealt with toxic family dynamics. That night didn't start with the speech. It started with the silence. The kind of silence that screams. I was standing there, adjusting the collar of a tuxedo that felt a little too tight around the neck, trying to make myself invisible. The room smelled of expensive lilies, roasted duck, and old money. You know that smell? It's crisp, cold, and metallic. It smells like judgment. Beside me stood my wife, Sarah. Sarah. Just saying her name calms my pulse. She was wearing a simple black dress she's had for years. Her hair was pulled back in a bun. No jewelry except for her plain wedding band. To everyone else in that room, she was just the teacher's wife. The mouse. The nobody. My mother had looked at her earlier that evening with a gaze that could strip paint off a wall and asked if she had found that dress at a yard sale. Sarah hadn't flinched. She never did. She just squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Just breathe, Robert," she whispered to me as the lights dimmed for my father's entrance. "Let them talk. Let them say everything they have to say." I didn't understand her calm. My stomach was twisting in knots. I felt like a fraud. I felt like a trespasser in my own bloodline. I looked around the room and saw the faces of people I had known since childhood, bankers, investors, real estate moguls. They all looked through me. To them, I was just a ghost. The disappointment. The Parker son who didn't make the cut. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why I was sweating through my shirt in a room kept at a chilly 68 degrees, you have to go back 7 days. It started with an email. Not a card. Not a phone call. An email. It landed in my spam folder, actually. Subject: Retirement Gala Arthur Parker. I opened it while sitting in the break room of the public high school where I teach history. The coffee machine was broken again, and the room smelled like burnt popcorn. The email was a generic blast sent by my father's secretary. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the legacy of Arthur Parker. Black tie. RSVP required." I stared at the screen. My father was retiring after 40 years of building a real estate empire in Manhattan. This was a monumental event, and I got the same invite as the guy who supplies the office toner. That night, I went to my parents' house to drop off a birthday gift for my mother, a book on gardening she had mentioned months ago. I parked my 7-year-old Honda Accord in the driveway, right behind a brand new, cherry red Ferrari 812 Superfast. William's car. Of course. I walked to the front door, the heavy oak monster that always felt like a barrier rather than an entrance. I could hear laughter inside, glasses clinking, the warm, booming voice of my father. I rang the bell. The housekeeper, Maria, opened it. She looked at me with those sad, pitying eyes she's given me since I was 12. "Mr. Robert," she whispered. "They are in the drawing room, having drinks." "Thanks, Maria." I walked down the hallway. The Persian rugs muffled my footsteps. As I got closer to the drawing room, the voices became clearer. "It's going to be the event of the decade, Will," my father was saying. "I've finally got Evelyn Vance to commit. Do you know what that means? If the Athena Group invests, we go global. The legacy is secured." "I know, Dad." William's voice was smooth, confident. "I've got the presentation ready. Once she sees the numbers, she'll sign. And then, I take the helm. You deserve it, son. You've got the killer instinct. You remind me of myself at your age. Hungry. Sharp." There was a pause. The ice in a glass clinked. "Is Robert coming?" William asked. There was a smirk in his voice. I could hear it. My mother sighed. It was a long, dramatic exhale. I suppose he has to. It would look bad if he wasn't there. People talk about estranged children. It affects the stock price. Just make sure he doesn't sit near the investors. My father grunted. The last thing I need is him talking about his students, or asking for a loan, or bringing that wife of his. Sarah? William laughed. God, she's so dreary. She looks like she cuts her own hair with safety scissors. I don't know how Robert stands it. It's depressing just looking at them. He settled, my father said. The two words hit me like a physical punch to the gut. Robert has always settled. He lacks ambition. He lacks the fire. He's content being mediocre. And he married someone mediocre to match. I stood there in the hallway, the gardening book heavy in my hand. I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to throw the book at the fireplace and scream that I was happy, that I loved my job, that I adored my wife, that my life had meaning even if it didn't have a stock ticker symbol attached to it. But I didn't, because that's what they expected. The emotional outburst, the weakness. Instead, I turned around. I handed the book to Maria, who was hovering in the kitchen doorway. Give this to Mom for me, I said, my voice shaking just a little. You not staying for dinner? Maria asked softly. No. I lost my appetite. I drove home in silence. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. When I got to our small, two-bedroom apartment in Queens, Sarah was sitting on the couch, working on her laptop. She's always working. I never really ask what she does. She told me once she does freelance data analysis and consulting. Seemed boring, honest work. I paid the bills when my teacher's salary fell short. She looked up as I walked in. She closed her laptop immediately. You're back early, she said. She read my face instantly. She always does. What happened? I sat down beside her and buried my face in my hands. They don't want me there, Sarah. But they need me there as a prop. I'm the mediocre son. And they talked about you. Sarah's expression hardened. What did they say? That you're dreary. That I settled. That we're embarrassing. I expected her to be hurt. I expected her to cry. Sarah is gentle. She rescues stray cats. She cries during insurance commercials. But she didn't cry. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the streetlights. Her reflection in the glass was unreadable. Robert, she said, her voice low, do you want to go to this party? No, I said. I want to never see them again. But if you don't go, they win, she said, turning to face me. If you don't go, you prove them right. You prove that you're weak, that you're afraid. I am afraid, I admitted. I'm afraid I'll snap. I'm afraid I'll embarrass you. Sarah walked over and cupped my face in her hands. Her thumbs brushed my cheekbones. You could never embarrass me. Listen to me, Robert. We are going to that party, and we are going to hold our heads high, because you are twice the man your father is, and 10 times the man your brother is. She pulled her phone out of her pocket. I have to make a call. Who are you calling at 10 p.m.? I asked, confused. A friend, she said vaguely. She walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I sat there, feeling a strange shift in the air. I didn't know it then, but the gears were already turning. While I was wallowing in self-pity, my wife was engaging in warfare. I heard her voice through the thin door, muffled but firm. It's time, she was saying. Initiate Plan B. Yes, the full package. They've crossed the line. I want everything ready by Friday. No mercy this time. None. I frowned. Plan B? Full package? She came out 5 minutes later, looking as serene as a monk. Everything is arranged, she said, sitting back down and opening her laptop again. What is arranged? The future. She smiled. A small, secretive smile I hadn't seen before. Now go take a shower. You smell like your parents' house. It smells like greed. That was the seed. That was the moment everything changed. But as I stood in the ballroom 3 weeks later, watching my father take the microphone, I still had no idea what was coming. I thought the worst part was over. I thought the humiliation was just the table seating and the snide comments. I was wrong. The humiliation was the main event, and I was the guest of honor. To truly understand why the events of that night were so explosive, you have to understand the decades of dynamite my family had been piling up under the foundation of my life. I wasn't always the outcast. When I was 5, I was just a kid. But even then, there were signs. My father, Arthur Parker, didn't play catch. He played negotiation. If I wanted a toy, I had to explain why it was a good investment of his capital. "Convince me, Robert," he'd say, looming over me with a cigar in his mouth. "What's the ROI on this G.I. Joe?" I was a sensitive kid. I liked stories. I liked history. I liked understanding why people did things. My brother, William, 2 years older, liked winning. He liked crushing ants with rocks. He liked cheating at Monopoly and then gaslighting me into thinking I had miscounted the money. He was the perfect heir. The rift became a canyon on my 18th birthday. For William's 18th, 2 years prior, there had been a party at the country club. A band flew in from London, and in the driveway, wrapped in a giant gold bow, sat a brand new Porsche 911. Silver, sleek, a shark on wheels. William had screamed, jumped into the driver's seat, and revved the engine until the neighbors complained. My father stood there, beaming, tears of pride in his eyes. "For the future CEO," he had announced. Fast forward 2 years. My 18th birthday. I came down to breakfast. There was no party planned, just a family dinner at a steakhouse. I tried not to get my hopes up, but I thought, maybe not a Porsche, but a car? I needed one for college. After pancakes, my father wiped his mouth with a napkin and tossed a small velvet box onto the table. My heart leaped. Keys? I opened the box. It was a watch, not a Rolex, not a Patek Philippe, a standard mid-range watch you could buy at a department store. Engraved on the back were the words, "Time is money." "Thank you," I said, trying to hide the crush in my chest. Is there a car?" The room went silent. William snorted into his orange juice. My mother looked at her toast. "A car?" my father asked, his eyebrows raising. "Robert, William got a car because he was entering Wharton Business School. He needed to look the part. You are going to... Where is it again?" State University," I said quietly. "For the history program." "History?" My father spat the word like it was a curse. "You want to study dead people. You want a car to drive to a library to read about people who accomplish things while you accomplish nothing? No, you can take the bus. It builds character. Maybe if you struggle a bit, you'll realize that passion doesn't pay the bills." "But you promised," I whispered. "I promised to support a son who contributes to this family's legacy," he said coldly. "I didn't promise to fund a hobby." That was the day I stopped asking for things. I worked 3 jobs in college. I took out loans. I drove a beat-up sedan with a rusted bumper. And I graduated summa cum laude. My parents didn't come to the graduation. They were in Milan shopping for furniture. Then I met Sarah. We met in a coffee shop. I was grading papers. She was reading a thick book on coding. She spilled her latte on my table. We laughed. We talked for 4 hours. She was different. She didn't care about my last name. She didn't care about the Parker real estate empire. She liked me. She liked that I was a teacher. She liked that I cared about kids who had nothing. "You're a builder, Robert," she told me on our 3rd date. "Your father builds condos. You build mines. Yours lasts longer." I fell in love with her so hard it scared me. But I was terrified to introduce her to my family. I knew what they would see. They wouldn't see her intelligence, her kindness, her wicked sense of humor. They would see her worn-out sneakers. They would see her lack of designer labels. I put it off for 6 months. Finally, my mother demanded to meet the mystery woman. We went for Sunday brunch. I warned Sarah, they can be intense. Just ignore them. "I can handle intense," she promised. We walked into the house. My mother greeted us in the foyer. She didn't hug Sarah. She didn't shake her hand. She scanned her up and down like a biological scanner looking for a virus. Her eyes stopped on Sarah's shoes. They were practical, comfortable walking shoes, not heels. "Oh," my mother said. "I didn't realize we were going hiking." Sarah smiled politely. "I believe in comfort, Mrs. Parker. It helps me think." "I see." My mother turned her back. "Well, try not to track mud on the marble." Dinner was a massacre. William asked Sarah what she did. "I work in tech," she said simply. "Tech?" William laughed. "Like, Geek Squad? You fix computers." "Something like that," Sarah said, taking a sip of water. "Well, tech is a service industry," my father proclaimed. "The real money is in owning the land the tech companies sit on. Rent-seeking. That's power." "Actually," Sarah said, her voice mild, "data is the new oil, Mr. Parker. Real estate is fluctuating. Intellectual property is infinite." The table went silent. No one contradicted Arthur Parker. My father turned slowly to look at her. "Is that so? And how much oil do you have, Sarah?" "Judging by your ensemble, I'd say the well is dry." I stood up. "That's enough. Sit down, Robert," my father barked. "I'm just teaching your girlfriend a lesson in economics. Value is visible. Success leaves clues. If you're smart, you're rich. If you're poor, well..." He shrugged. Sarah placed a hand on my arm to stop me from shouting. "It's okay, Robert. Your father is entitled to his outdated theories." My father turned purple. "Outdated? I built this city." "You built buildings," Sarah corrected. "There's a difference." We left early. In the car, I apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry. They're monsters. I shouldn't have brought you." "It's fine," she said. She wasn't angry. She looked calculating. "It's good to know exactly who you're dealing with. Clarifies the strategy." We got married 3 months later. My parents sent a toaster, a $50 toaster, for their son. William didn't attend. He said he had a golf tournament. For 4 years, we lived simply. We were happy. But the shadow of my family always hung over me. The inheritance keyword was a weapon they used. "You know," my mother would say on the phone, "William is taking over the trust. If you just quit that silly teaching job and joined the firm in the mailroom, maybe your father would reinstate you in the will." "I don't want his money, Mom." "Everyone wants money, Robert. Don't be naive. You're denying your wife a future. Does she know you've cut her off from millions? Or is she sticking around hoping you'll change your mind? Poor thing. Living in that shoebox in Queens. Ate away at me. The fear that I was failing Sarah. That I was dragging her down into a life of struggle when I could technically give her luxury if I just sold my soul. I asked her once late at night, "Do you wish I was more like William? Rich? Powerful?" Sarah turned in bed, her eyes shining in the dark. "Robert, you are the richest man I know because you have a conscience. Never trade that. Promise me." "I promise." But promises don't stop the pain of humiliation. And as the retirement party approached, the pain was becoming physical. The week leading up to the gala was a masterclass in psychological warfare. 3 days before the event, my phone rang. It was William. I almost didn't answer, but I thought maybe it was an emergency involving Dad's health. "Hello, Robbie," William shouted. He was clearly driving. I could hear the roar of an engine. "Guess what I'm sitting in?" "I don't know, William." "A chair." "Funny. I'm in the Ferrari. The 812. Just picked it up. V12 engine, baby. It screams. 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. Cost me 350 grand. Paid in cash." My stomach tightened. "Congratulations, William." "Yeah, well, that's what happens when you close deals. Listen, I'm calling with a favor. Or rather, an instruction." "What is it?" "For the party on Saturday, don't park that thing you drive at the front entrance. The valet is going to be swamped with Rolls-Royces and Maybachs. We don't need your dented Honda cluttering up the visual. Park it down the block. There's a public garage on 5th Walk the rest of the way." "You want me to walk in the rain?" "It's forecast to rain." Take an umbrella, Rob. Just don't embarrass the brand. We have high-profile guests. Evelyn Vance is coming. You know who she is. The billionaire investor. Founder of the Athena Group. Yes, I read the news. Right? She's looking for a partner for a massive tech hub development. If we land this, I get a $10 million bonus. So do me a favor. Don't speak to her. Don't look at her. In fact, try to look less like a teacher. Maybe rent a better tux? I can loan you a few $100 if you're short. I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. I have a tuxedo, William. Goodbye. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Inheritance. Custody. Promotion. These words swirled in my head. They were playing a game where the score was money, and I was losing 50 million to 0. I went to the closet to check my old tuxedo. It was moth-eaten. There was a hole in the lapel. I slumped against the doorframe. He was right. Couldn't wear this. Robert. I turned. Sarah was standing there, holding a garment bag. A sleek, black, heavy garment bag. I went shopping today, she said casually. I saw a sale. Sarah, we can't afford. Hush. I had some savings. Open it. I unzipped the bag. Inside was the most beautiful tuxedo I had ever seen. The fabric was midnight black, soft as butter but heavy with quality. The lapels were satin. This isn't a sale item, Sarah. I touched the fabric. This looks expensive. It's an investment, she shrugged. You need to look handsome for your father's big night. Try it on. I put it on. Fit perfectly, like a second skin. It didn't pinch. It didn't sag. It made my shoulders look broader, my posture straighter. How did you know my measurements? I asked, looking in the mirror. For the first time in years, I didn't look like the tired teacher. I looked like a Parker, or what a Parker should be. I have my ways, she winked. You look dangerous, Robert. You look like a man who knows something everyone else doesn't. I don't know anything, I sighed. You will, she murmured. Oh, one more thing. She handed me a box. Cufflinks. But not just any cufflinks. They were silver, shaped like little owls. For wisdom, she said. Because you're the wise one. I hugged her, burying my face in her neck. I don't deserve you. I swear, if they say one mean thing to you on Saturday, we are leaving. I don't care about the scene. No. She pulled back, her eyes steel. If they say mean things, we stay. We stay until the very end. Promise me. Why? Because the ending is the best part of the story. Friday came, the day before the party. I had to go to my parents' office to sign some legal waivers regarding the trust, basically acknowledging that I was receiving nothing so I couldn't sue later. My lawyer had advised against signing, but I just wanted to be done with them. I walked into the Parker Real Estate headquarters. Glass walls, chrome, intimidation. William's office door was open. I heard my father's voice inside. Are the accounts ready for Vance's audit? My father asked. Mostly, William said. His voice sounded nervous. There are a few gaps in the liquidity fund, but I moved some numbers around. It looks solid. Moved numbers. My father sounded sharp. William, you know Vance's team is thorough. If they find discrepancies, they won't. Covered it. Look, Dad, once the Athena money hits, I'll fill the hole. It's just a temporary cash flow issue. I needed the cash for setting up the deal. The Ferrari? Dad asked. Image is everything, Dad. You taught me that. Fine. Just get the signature. We need that Athena capital. We are leveraged to the hilt on the Midtown project. If Vance walks away, we are underwater. She won't walk. I heard her husband is a softie for charity. Maybe we fake a donation. Focus, William. What about Robert? He's coming. I told him to park down the street. Good. And his wife? The gold digger? William snorted. She'll probably wear a burlap sack. Dad, are you sure she doesn't know about the... She knows nothing. She's a simpleton. She thinks Robert is a martyr. She has no idea she married the runt of the litter. Just keep them away from Vance. If Vance sees we have a teacher in the family, she might think we're running a charity, not a business. I stepped back from the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Gold digger. They called Sarah a gold digger. Sarah who bought my clothes. Sarah who paid half the rent. Sarah who never asked for a dime. And William was cooking the books. Moved some numbers. Hole in the liquidity fund. I realized then that the empire wasn't just cruel. It was rotting. They were desperate. They needed this investor, this Evelyn Vance, to save them. I quietly turned and left the building without signing the waiver. I got into my Honda. My hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from rage. Cold, hard rage. I called Sarah. "Hey!" she answered on the first ring. "They called you a gold digger," I said, my voice flat. "And William is embezzling money. They are desperate for the Athena deal." There was a silence on the other end. Then, a sound I didn't expect. Sarah laughed. It was a dark, dry laugh. "Desperate, are they?" she said. "Good. Desperation makes people careless. Come home, Robert. Get a good night's sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a very long, very interesting day." "Sarah, what are you planning?" "Justice," she said. "See you at home." The drive to the Plaza Hotel was silent. The rain William had predicted was coming down in sheets, turning the New York streets into slick, black rivers. The wipers of my Honda slapped back and forth, a rhythmic countdown to disaster. Sarah sat beside me, looking out the window. She looked regal in her simple black dress, but I noticed something. She was texting. Fast. Her fingers flew across the screen of her phone. "Who are you talking to?" I asked, navigating around a taxi. "My team," she said. "Team? What team?" "Your fantasy football league." I tried to joke, but my voice cracked. She looked at me, her eyes uncharacteristically serious. "My security team, and my legal team." I almost swerved. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" "Eyes on the road, Robert. We're here." We pulled up to the grand entrance of the plaza. The awning was bathed in golden light. A line of cars stretched ahead of us. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, a Maybach, a Bentley, and then my 2016 Honda Accord with the dent in the rear bumper. I pulled up to the valet stand. A young man in a uniform rushed to the Rolls-Royce ahead of us, opening the door with a bow. When I pulled up, he hesitated. He actually checked his clipboard to see if a delivery was expected. I rolled down the window. "Valet, please." The valet looked at the car, then at me. "Sir, deliveries are around back." "I am a guest," I said, handing him my invitation. "Robert Parker, son of the honoree." The valet blinked. He looked at the invitation, then at the Honda. "Oh, right. Leave the keys. We might have to park this on the lower level. The front lot is full." "It's fine," I said, stepping out. I opened the umbrella to shield Sarah. As Sarah stepped out, a roar echoed behind us. Vroom. A bright yellow Lamborghini Aventador swerved around us, cutting close to the curb to bypass the line. The side mirror missed Sarah's hip by inches. I pulled her back, splashing water onto my new tuxedo pants. The window of the Lamborghini rolled down. It was one of William's friends, a hedge fund guy named Brad. "Watch the road, school teacher," Brad yelled, laughing. "This paint job costs more than your salary." He sped up to the valet, tossing his keys to the attendant who caught them like they were holy relics. My blood boiled. I wanted to drag him out of that car. "Robert," Sarah's voice was calm. She placed a hand on my wet sleeve. "Don't. The car is a rental. I can see the fleet tag on the windshield." "How do you notice that?" "I notice everything. Come, let's go inside." We walked up the red carpet. I felt like an imposter, but Sarah walked like she owned the building. Head up, shoulders back. She didn't look at the photographers. She looked past them. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The air buzzed with the chatter of millions of dollars changing hands. Waiters circulated with trays of caviar and champagne. I took a glass of champagne. The waiter subtly pulled the tray away before Sarah could take one. "Sorry, empty," he mumbled, turning to offer a full glass to a woman in diamonds standing next to us. I stared at his retreating back. "Did you see that?" "It's okay," Sarah said. "I don't drink cheap champagne anyway." We looked for the seating chart. A giant board with calligraphy names. Table 1. The head table. Arthur, Helen, William. Table 2. The investors, including Mrs. Evelyn Vance. Table 3. The partners. I scanned down. Way down. Table 14. Robert Parker and guest. "Where is table 14? I asked the maitre d'. He smirked. "Ah yes, follow me." He led us away from the stage, away from the chandeliers. We walked past the center tables, past the back tables. We walked until we were literally next to the swinging double doors of the kitchen. Table 14 was a small, wobbly two-top squeezed between a decorative ficus plant and the service station where waiters dumped dirty dishes. Every time the kitchen door opened, a blast of steam and the smell of dish soap hit us. "Unbelievable," I muttered, pulling out a chair for Sarah. "We are in the service corridor. It gives us a strategic view of the room," Sarah said, sitting down and smoothing her dress. She turned her chair slightly so she wasn't facing the wall, but facing the stage across the vast room. "Sarah, we should leave. This is an insult." "Sit," she ordered, softly but firmly. I sat. 10 minutes later, a hush fell over the room. The double doors at the main entrance opened. A woman walked in. She was in her 60s with silver hair cut in a sharp bob. She wore a white suit that glowed under the lights. She walked with a cane, but she didn't use it for support. She used it like a scepter. Mrs. Evelyn Vance. The billionaire. The target. My father and William practically sprinted from the head table to greet her. I saw my father actually bow. William flashed his brightest, most predatory smile. "Evelyn, so glad you could make it." I heard my father's booming voice. Mrs. Vance didn't smile. She shook Arthur's hand briefly, then William's. She looked bored. She looked like a woman who had been to 1,000 of these parties and hated every single one. They ushered her to table 2, the VIP table directly in front of the stage. As she sat down, she scanned the room. Her eyes swept over the crowd. She looked at the head table. She looked at the guests. Then her eyes stopped. She was looking toward the back, toward the kitchen, toward us. I looked behind me to see if there was a celebrity waiter or something. No one. I turned back. Mrs. Vance was staring straight at Sarah. And then the impossible happened. Mrs. Vance nodded. A sharp, respectful nod. I looked at Sarah. Sarah didn't wave. She just raised her chin slightly. An acknowledgement. Do you know her?" I whispered. "We've met," Sarah said, picking up a breadstick. "Met? Where?" "At the library." "Something like that," she said. My father was now on the stage, tapping the microphone. The feedback squeal silenced the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "thank you for coming to celebrate not just my retirement, but the future of Parker Real Estate." The applause was polite. "Tonight is about legacy," he continued. "It's about passing the torch to the next generation." I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. I knew what was coming. The speech, the public execution of my character. But first, my father smiled, a shark-like grin. "Let me introduce my family." He pointed to my mother. She stood and waved. "My rock, Helen." Applause. "And," he paused for dramatic effect, "my successor, the man who has doubled our portfolio in 3 years. My son, William." William stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked smug. He waved to the crowd, then specifically to Mrs. Vance. "And finally," my father said, his tone changing. It dropped an octave. It became patronizing. "We have my other son, Robert." He gestured vaguely toward the back of the room, toward the kitchen doors. A spotlight swiveled, searching for me. Took a moment to find us in the shadows. When it hit us, I was blinded. "Robert chose a different path," my father said into the microphone. A noble path, some might say. He is a teacher. A few people clapped, mostly out of pity. Yes, yes, my father chuckled. He shapes the minds of the future, because he certainly couldn't shape a skyline. The room erupted in laughter. I froze. My face burned. Robert has always been a supporter, my father continued, enjoying the audience's reaction. Some men are leaders. They hunt. They build. Some men, well, they grade papers. They support. And that's okay. We need people to sit in the stands and clap for the players, right? More laughter. William was shaking with mirth at the front table. And he brought his lovely wife, Sarah, my father added. Sarah, stand up. Sarah didn't move. She's shy, my father mocked. Or maybe she's just overwhelmed by the company. It's a long way from the public school district to the plaza. Isn't it? The laughter turned cruel. I saw people whispering, looking at Sarah's plain dress, looking at our table by the kitchen. But seriously, my father said, leaning in, I love both my sons. Even the one who, how shall I put this? The one who is a tax write-off. That was it. The line. I started to stand up. I was going to flip the table. I was going to scream. But a hand grabbed my wrist. Hard. It was Sarah. Wait, she said. He just called me a tax write-off. I hissed. I know, she said. She stood up. She didn't stand up quickly. She stood up slowly, deliberately. She smoothed her skirt. She looked at the spotlight blinding us. Then she started walking. Not toward the exit. Toward the stage. The room went quiet. Not the respectful silence of a speech, but the confused silence of a disruption. Why was the teacher's wife walking toward the stage? Was she going to make a scene? Was she drunk? The spotlight followed her. Click-clack, click-clack. Her heels on the marble floor were the only sound in the room. I sat there paralyzed. Sarah, I whispered, but she didn't look back. My father stood on the stage looking confused. He lowered the microphone slightly. Sarah, what are you doing? The restrooms are to the left. The crowd tittered nervously. Sarah kept walking. She walked past the back tables, past the middle tables. Her face was a mask of absolute calm. She walked with a predator's grace. As she passed table 3, a man whispered loud enough to be heard, Sit down, sweetheart. She ignored him. She reached the front of the room. She reached table 2, the VIP table. And then she stopped. She stopped right in front of Evelyn Vance. The room held its breath. Was she going to beg for a job? Was she going to attack the billionaire? My father spoke into the mic, his voice irritated now. Security? Can we get someone to escort my daughter-in-law back to her seat? She's clearly confused. 2 security guards started moving from the sides. And then Evelyn Vance stood up. The billionaire, the Iron Lady of Wall Street, the woman my father had been courting for 6 months, stood up. She turned to Sarah, and she bowed. It wasn't a curtsy. It was a deep, respectful bow of the head. Madam Chairman, Mrs. Vance said. Her voice carried clearly in the silent room. We have been waiting for your arrival. My father dropped his glass. It shattered on the stage, the sound exploding like a gunshot. Madam Chairman? Sarah nodded to Evelyn. Thank you, Evelyn. I apologize for being late. I was seated by the kitchen. Sarah turned and walked up the stairs to the stage. She walked right up to my father. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He was trembling. Sarah? He stammered. What is this? Sarah didn't answer him. She reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He let it go without a fight. She turned to face the room. 200 faces stared back at her in shock. Good evening, Sarah said. Her voice was different. It wasn't the soft, gentle voice of the wife I knew. It was commanding. It had steel in it. It was the voice of someone who owned the air conditioning unit cooling the room. My name, she said clearly, is Sarah Smith Parker. A gasp rippled through the front row. A banker at table 4 stood up, knocking his chair over. Sarah Smith? The founder of Athena Group. Yes, Sarah said. For 6 years, I have operated under my maiden name in the business world to protect my privacy. I founded Athena Group when I was 22. We currently manage assets worth $40 billion. She paused. The number hung in the air. 40 billion. My father's net worth was 50 million. He was a minnow. She was a leviathan. I sat in my chair by the kitchen, my mouth open. My wife. My Sarah. The woman who clipped coupons for laundry detergent. I am the investor, Sarah said, turning to look at my father. That you have been desperate to meet. I am the one who holds the fate of your Midtown project in my hands. My father turned pale. Sarah, I didn't know. Why didn't you say something? Because I wanted to know who you were, Sarah said into the mic. I wanted to know if you were a man worthy of partnership. I wanted to see how you treated those you considered beneath you. She looked out at the crowd. I have watched this family for 4 years. I have watched you humiliate your son, Robert, a man who is kind, a man who is honest, a man who teaches history because he wants to improve the world, not because he can't exploit it. She gestured to me in the back. The spotlight swung back to me. I felt tears pricking my eyes. You called him a failure. Sarah's voice rose, trembling with controlled anger. You called him a supporter. Well, let me tell you something, Arthur. Robert is the only success in this room, because he achieved happiness without needing to step on anyone's neck to get it. She turned to William. My brother was sitting frozen, his face a mask of terror. And you, Sarah said, pointing a finger at him. William. William gulped. Sarah. Sis. It was just a joke. A joke, she repeated. Is the audit a joke, William? William's eyes went wide. My team has been reviewing your books for the last 48 hours as part of our due diligence, Sarah announced. We found the hole in the liquidity fund. $2 million. Siphoned off into offshore gambling accounts. The crowd gasped. Phones came out. Cameras started flashing. You stole from the company to rent a Ferrari and look like a big shot, Sarah said ruthlessly. That is not leadership. That is fraud. She turned back to the audience. Athena Group is officially pulling its offer. We will not be investing in Parker Real Estate. In fact, we will be calling in the short-term loans my subsidiary bank issued to you last year. They are due on Monday. My father grabbed the podium to stop himself from falling. Monday? We can't pay that. We'll be bankrupt. Then I suggest you start liquidating assets, Sarah said, cold as ice. Maybe sell the furniture. I hear the market for used podiums is booming. She handed the microphone back to my father. He couldn't hold it. It clattered to the floor with a deafening thud. Sarah walked down the stairs. The room parted for her like the Red Sea. No one breathed. No one moved. She walked straight to the back of the room. Straight to me. She held out her hand. Come on, Robert, she said, her voice softening back to the Sarah I knew. Let's go. I'm hungry. And the food here smells like hypocrisy. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I took her hand. You own Athena Group? I whispered as we walked past the stunned guests. We own it, she corrected. Marital property, remember? We walked toward the exit. But before we could leave, William came running up the aisle. He was sweating. He looked frantic. Sarah, wait, please, he begged, grabbing her arm. 2 men in dark suits, Sarah's real security team, materialized out of nowhere and blocked him. One of them shoved William back. Don't touch her, the guard growled. My car, William screamed, losing all dignity. The valet said my car is being towed. Sarah, stop them. It's a rental. If they tow it, I lose the deposit. Sarah stopped. She turned slowly. William, she said, take the bus. It builds character. We walked out the front doors. The rain had stopped. The air was fresh. At the curb, my Honda was gone. In its place sat the Rolls-Royce Phantom that Evelyn Vance had arrived in. The valet, the same one who had snubbed me earlier, was holding the door open, looking terrified. Mrs. Parker, the valet stammered. Mr. Parker. Your car is ready. This isn't our car, I said. It is now, Sarah said, sliding into the back seat. Evelyn insisted. She took the Honda. She said she wanted to drive something reliable for a change. I got in beside her. The leather smelled like victory. As we pulled away, I looked back. I saw my father and mother standing on the steps of the hotel, looking small, defeated, and utterly alone. The ride away from the plaza was surreal. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows of the Rolls-Royce. I sat there, gripping the armrest, looking at my wife. Are you real? I asked. Sarah laughed, kicking off her heels and curling her legs up on the seat. I'm real, Robert. I'm just complicated. Complicated? You're a billionaire. Why did we live in Queens? Why did we clip coupons? Why did you let my mother insult your shoes? Because I needed to know that you loved me, she said, her eyes searching mine. Not the money, not the power, just Sarah. And you did. You defended me when I had nothing. You bought me a tuxedo when you thought we were broke. That is worth more than $40 billion. I leaned back, exhaling a breath I felt like I had been holding for 4 years. So what happens now? Now? She pulled out her phone. Now we watch the dominoes fall. The fallout was instantaneous. By the next morning, the story was on page 6 of the Post. Teacher's wife teaches billionaire lesson. Parker real estate empire collapses at gala. My phone blew up. 50 missed calls from my mother. 20 from my father. Text messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in a decade. Robert, call us. We need to talk. It was a misunderstanding. We are family. I didn't answer. 2 days later, the news broke about William. The district attorney had opened an investigation into the embezzlement. It turned out the hole in the funds wasn't just for the Ferrari. He had been gambling on crypto futures and losing bad. The police arrested him at his penthouse. The cameras caught him being led out in handcuffs, wearing a hoodie to hide his face. My father's company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy the following Monday. The short-term loans Sarah had called in were the nail in the coffin. Without the Athena investment, the banks circled like vultures. They seized the assets, the office building, the condos, and the house. I went to see them one last time, a week after the party. They were packing boxes in the mansion. The furniture had been tagged for auction. My father was sitting in his study, staring at the empty wall where his portrait used to hang. He looked old, deflated. Robert, he said when I walked in. He didn't stand up. You came to gloat? No, I said. I came to get my old baseball glove. I think I left it in the attic. Take it. He waved a hand. Take everything. Your wife already has. She didn't take anything, Dad. She just stopped giving. My mother walked in. Her eyes were red. She wasn't wearing pearls. She looked like a frightened old woman. Robert. She grabbed my arm. Talk to her. Please. We'll be on the street. We have nowhere to go. You have the condo in Florida, I said. The one in your name. Sarah didn't touch that. It's small, but it's a roof. A 2-bedroom condo? She wailed. I can't live in a condo. I have standing in this community. Not anymore, Mom, I said gently. Now you're just people, like the rest of us. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Sarah and I didn't move into a penthouse immediately. We stayed in Queens for another month because I wanted to finish the school semester. I didn't quit my job. I love teaching. But things changed. One afternoon, I came out of school to find a sleek, gray Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo waiting at the curb. Sarah was leaning against it, wearing sunglasses. What's this? I asked. Your new grading station, she smiled. It's electric, practical, but fast. I thought we were being humble? We are, she kissed me. But we don't have to be slow. We drove past the public garage on 5th Avenue, where I had been told to park my Honda. I slowed down. You okay? Sarah asked. Yeah, I smiled. I'm finally okay. 3 months had passed since the night at the Plaza Hotel. 3 months since the glass ceiling of my father's ego shattered under the weight of my wife's quiet power. Life didn't just go back to normal. Normal was gone. We had to build something new. We moved out of the apartment in Queens. Not because we thought we were too good for it, but because the paparazzi had started camping out on the fire escape. Sarah valued privacy above almost everything else, and having a cameraman trying to photograph us eating cereal through the kitchen window was where she drew the line. We bought a house in Westchester. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't a sprawling estate with marble fountains and statues of lions guarding the driveway like the one I grew up in. It was a 1920s farmhouse on 4 acres of land, surrounded by trees. It had creaky wooden floors, a wraparound porch, and a library that smelled of cedar and old paper. It was a home. I remember the first morning I woke up there. The sun was streaming through the sheer curtains, hitting the floorboards in golden pools. I lay there for 20 minutes, just listening. I was waiting for the anxiety. I was waiting for the familiar tightening in my chest, the internal voice telling me I needed to earn my place, that I was a disappointment, that I was behind in the race of life. But the voice didn't come. There was just the sound of birds and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. I walked downstairs to find Sarah sitting at the rustic kitchen table, reviewing a digital blueprint on her tablet. She was wearing one of my old flannels over her pajamas. "Good morning, Mr. Parker," she smiled, not looking up. "How does it feel to be a man of leisure on a Saturday?" "It feels quiet," I said, pouring a mug of coffee. "Is that the new STEM Center?" "It is." She turned the screen to show me. "The Sarah and Robert Parker Center for Science and History. We break ground next month." I looked at the rendering. It was beautiful. Glass wood, light. It was a school for underprivileged kids in the district where I taught. It was fully funded by the Athena Group, but Sarah insisted my name go on it first. "I still think we should just call it the Parker Center," I said. "No." Sarah shook her head firmly. "The name Parker in this city used to mean eviction notices and luxury condos nobody could afford. We are rebranding. Now it means opportunity." I sat down across from her. "Have you heard from them?" Sarah's face didn't change, but her eyes cooled slightly. "Your mother called the house line this morning. I let it go to voicemail." "What did she want?" "She wanted to know if we could send a car. Apparently, the air conditioning in the Florida condo is aggressive, and she thinks the tap water tastes like swamp." I let out a short, dry laugh. "It's filtered water, Sarah. I checked the listing myself. It's a nice condo. Granite countertops. Pool access. To Helen Parker, granite countertops in a 1,200 square foot unit are practically prison bars," Sarah said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Do you want to call her back?" I thought about it. I thought about the years of Sunday dinners where I was the punchline. I thought about the retirement party. I thought about the supporter comment. "No," I said. "I have papers to grade." And that was the truth. I hadn't quit my job. In fact, I loved it more than ever. I drove my gray Porsche Taycan to the high school every morning, parked it between the principal's Ford and the gym teacher's Jeep, and went to work teaching the American Revolution. The only difference was that now, when a student couldn't afford a textbook or a field trip, the money mysteriously appeared in the school's account. The custody of their education was safe with me. The students knew something had changed. Kids are sharp, but they didn't treat me like a billionaire. They treated me like Mr. Parker, the guy who gets too excited about the Boston Tea Party. That was the only validation I needed. However, the reality of my family's downfall was unavoidable. It was everywhere. William's trial was the headline of the month. The investigation Sarah had triggered revealed that the hole in the liquidity fund was just the tip of the iceberg. William had been running a Ponzi scheme within the company's own subsidiary accounts to cover his gambling debts. He had defrauded investors, faked audits, and embezzled nearly $5 million over 4 years. I went to the sentencing. Sarah didn't come. She said she didn't want to give William the satisfaction of seeing her face. The courtroom was packed. My father wasn't there. He claimed heart palpitations and stayed in Florida. My mother was there, sitting in the back row, wearing sunglasses and a scarf over her head like a movie star trying to be incognito, but looking more like a ghost. When the judge asked William if he had anything to say, my brother stood up. He looked thinner. His expensive tan had faded to a sallow gray. He wasn't wearing an Armani suit. He was wearing a standard-issue orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. I just wanted to win, William said, his voice cracking. I just wanted to be big. The judge was unimpressed. Mr. Parker, greatness is not measured by the car you drive, but by the integrity you keep. You have shown neither. 5 years in federal prison. Restitution of $4 million. As the bailiffs led him away, William looked back. He scanned the crowd, looking for a friendly face. He looked for Dad. He looked for Mom. His eyes locked with mine. For a second, I saw the brother I used to play with before the money corrupted us. I saw the fear. I saw the realization that the golden child was just gold-plated lead. I nodded to him, a small, solemn nod. Goodbye, William. He looked down and let them lead him through the side door. I walked out of the courthouse and found my Uncle George waiting for me on the steps. George was my father's estranged brother, the one who had left the family business 30 years ago to become a mechanic. My father called him a grease monkey. I called him the only honest Parker left. Rough day, kid? George asked, handing me a coffee in a paper cup. Justice usually is, I said, taking a sip. Did you talk to Dad? George sighed, looking out at the city traffic. Yeah, I called him yesterday. He's not handling it well, Robbie. He spends his days sitting on the balcony of that condo, watching the golfers and complaining that the grass isn't cut to regulation height. He blames everyone. The market, the government, Sarah, even me. Does he blame himself? Arthur. George laughed, a bitter sound. Arthur Parker has never made a mistake in his life, according to Arthur Parker. In his mind, he's the victim of a grand conspiracy. He thinks Sarah is a witch who enchanted you. He's right about the enchanting part. I smiled. But not the way he thinks. You know, George kicked a pebble down the stairs. I always knew you were the strong one. William was brittle. He needed the applause to stand up straight. You stood up straight even when they were throwing bricks at you. I'm proud of you, Robert. Thanks, Uncle George. So, he clapped me on the shoulder. Now that you're married to the Queen of Wall Street, are you going to buy an island? Actually, I said, checking my watch, I'm going to Home Depot. Sarah wants to build a raised garden bed for tomatoes, and she insists we do it ourselves. Apparently, organic tastes better when you have dirt under your fingernails. George laughed, a real hearty laugh. That's a good life, kid. That's a good life. I drove home, the Porsche humming quietly along the highway. I thought about the concept of inheritance. My parents had tried to dangle a financial inheritance over my head like a carrot for 30 years. But the real inheritance was what I was building now. It wasn't money. It was peace. When I got home, Sarah was in the yard, wearing muddy boots and wrestling with a bag of soil. Help, she grunted. This bag weighs more than your brother's ego. I laughed and grabbed the other end. We dumped the soil into the cedar box we had built the weekend before. So, Sarah said, wiping sweat from her forehead. How was it? 5 years, I said. Sarah paused. She looked at the dirt on her hands. It's a tragedy, Robert. I know he was cruel, but he was your brother. It's okay to be sad. I am sad, I admitted. I'm sad for the little boy he used to be. But Sarah, I felt something else today. What? Relief. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm in his shadow. The shadow is gone. Sarah stood up and walked over to me. She put her dirty hands on my clean shirt, leaving smudge marks right over my heart. You were never in his shadow, Robert. You were just standing in the dark because you were too polite to turn on your own light. We stood there for a moment, the sun setting behind the trees. Hey, I said, I have a question. One I never asked. Shoot. Why me? I asked. You could have had anyone. You're Sarah Smith. You could have married a senator. a tech mogul, a movie star. Why a high school history teacher with a dented Honda and family trauma? Sarah smiled, and her eyes got that misty look they get when she watches old movies. Do you remember the day we met? At the coffee shop? Yeah. You spilled your latte on my grading papers. It ruined 3 essays on the Civil War. I didn't spill it by accident, she confessed. My jaw dropped. What? I was watching you, she said. I had been sitting there for an hour. I saw a homeless man come in. The manager was about to kick him out. You stood up, walked over, and bought him a sandwich and a coffee. You didn't do it for attention. You didn't post it on Instagram. You just chatted with him about the weather while he ate, shook his hand, and went back to your work. She touched my face. In my world, Robert, everyone wants something. Everyone is keeping score. I saw a man who gave without expecting a receipt. I knew right then. I told myself, I'm going to marry that man. So, I threw my latte at you. I laughed, pulling her into a hug. You owe me $3 for that coffee. I'll put it in your college fund, she teased. That evening, we sat on the porch. The phone rang inside. We ignored it. We knew who it was. It was the past trying to call collect. My mother eventually stopped calling every day. She learned to live in the condo. We heard from Uncle George that she had joined a bridge club and was telling everyone that her son was a silent partner in a major conglomerate and that we were simply too busy traveling to visit. She was still spinning stories. She was still trying to curate a reality that didn't exist. But that was her burden to carry, not mine. I had a different burden. I had a tomato garden to water. I had exams to grade. I had a wife who loved me for my soul, not my surname. I looked at the driveway where the Porsche sat next to Sarah's muddy gardening boots. It was the perfect picture of balance. We had the means to go anywhere, do anything. But we chose to be here. Robert, Sarah said from the swing, watching the fireflies come out. Are you happy? I looked at the house. I looked at her. I looked at the invisible scars on my arms that had finally stopped aching. I'm not just happy, Sarah, I said. I'm free. 1 year later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Parker Education Center was not a gala. There was no champagne. There were no tuxedos. It was a block party. We closed down the street in front of the new building. There were food trucks serving tacos and burgers. There was a bouncy castle for the younger kids. A local high school jazz band was playing on a makeshift stage. I stood on the steps of the new building, looking out at the crowd. It wasn't filled with investors or hedge fund managers. It was filled with parents, teachers, and students. The people who actually make a city run. Sarah stood beside me, holding a giant pair of scissors. She looked radiant in a simple sundress. She hated speeches, so she had made me promise to do the talking. Go on, she nudged me. They're waiting for Mr. Parker. I stepped up to the microphone. It was a different feeling than watching my father hold a mic. He used a microphone as a weapon to dominate a room. I wanted to use it as a bridge. Hi everyone, I said. The feedback squealed for a second, and everyone laughed. A genuine, warm sound. I'm Robert. I teach history down the street. Cheers from my students in the front row. My father used to tell me that if you want to leave a legacy, you have to build skyscrapers. I continued, looking at the sleek glass facade behind me. He thought legacy was about how high you could reach, how much of the sky you could block out for yourself. I paused. I saw Mrs. Vance in the crowd, eating a taco and nodding at me. But I learned that real legacy isn't about looking down on people from a penthouse. It's about lifting people up so they can see the view, too. This center isn't a monument. It's a tool. It's for you. It's for the kid who wants to code but doesn't have a computer. It's for the artist who needs a studio. It's for the dreamer who just needs someone to say, I believe in you. I looked at Sarah. She was beaming. My wife taught me that value isn't printed on a bank statement, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Value is what you bring to the table when the money is gone. So, let's make something valuable. We cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered. The band played a funk version of Celebration. Later that afternoon, as the party was winding down, I found myself sitting on a bench near the entrance, watching a group of kids playing tag on the new lawn. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. It was a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about the center. It looks nice. Your mother says hello, Dad. It was the first time he had contacted me directly in a year. No apology. No admission of guilt. Just, it looks nice. I stared at the screen. A year ago, that text would have sent me into a spiral of analysis. Does he mean it? Is he sarcastic? Does he want money? Now, I just saw it for what it was. A lonely man reaching out from his exile, trying to touch a world he no longer understood. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I didn't hate him anymore. Hate takes too much energy. I just felt a distant pity, like you feel for a character in a tragedy who refuses to learn their lesson before the final curtain. Sarah sat down next to me. Who was it? Just spam, I said, slipping the phone into my pocket. Ready to go home? Yeah, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. Let's go home. We walked to the car. We didn't take the Rolls-Royce that day. We took the Porsche, but we drove it slowly, windows down, letting the sounds of the neighborhood wash over us. I realized then that the twist of my life wasn't that my wife was a billionaire. That was just a plot point. The real twist was that I had spent 30 years thinking I was the failure, only to realize I was the only one who had passed the test. I had my dignity, I had my love, and I had my name, not the one my father gave me, but the one I had made for myself. Thank you for walking this road with Robert and Sarah. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it? From the humiliation of table 14 to the quiet victory of the garden bed. But before you go, I want to leave you with a thought that has been sticking with me since I started telling this story. We live in a world that is obsessed with the optics of success. We scroll through Instagram and see the cars, the vacations, the titles. We see the William Parkers of the world and we think, why not me? But this story teaches us a brutal truth. Net worth is not self-worth. My father and brother had the millions, the Ferraris, and the status, but their souls were bankrupt. They were so poor all they had was money. Robert, on the other hand, had integrity, kindness, and patience. Those are currencies that never crash. Those are the assets that attracted a woman like Sarah. So, here is my question for you, and I really want you to think about it before you type. What is one invisible asset you possess that money can't buy? Is it your patience? Your loyalty? Your ability to make people laugh when they're sad? Share it in the comments below. Let's fill the comment section with real value. Or, if this story helped you realize that you are worth more than your bank account, just comment the word good. It's a simple word, but it tells me that we are on the same page. You are valuable. You are enough. Never let anyone seat you by the kitchen.